In the expanded universe of Dragon Ball, we have seen a number of protagonists join the ranks of the Z Fighters or Earth Special Forces in order to fend off threats not only in the present but across time. And a character who symbolizes this to the greatest degree would have to be the very popular Future Trunks. And Trunks has had to make some very difficult decisions throughout the course of the Dragon Ball franchise. But what are 5 times Trunks made the wrong decision? And what are 5 times Trunks messed up? Well, today, QAAMAN'S Land and myself have come together and come up with these ideas for you on this list of the 5 times Future Trunks messed up in Dragon Ball. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all upcoming videos in the future. Hey guys, it's Mike here, and as I said, in this video, we are going to be breaking down 5 times Future Trunks messed up in Dragon Ball Super, and I came up with a couple of the ideas, but most of the credit for this video goes to the great legendary master of what-ifs, QAAMAN from QAAMAN'S Land himself. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, alrighty guys, it's QAAMAN here today, and I appreciate Mike for that nice intro.
And Trunks, of course, has made some really bad decisions throughout the course of Dragon Ball, just as most of the characters seem to have made. So let's start off with the first one we're going to be discussing on this list, which QAAMAN himself is going to be breaking down, and that is...
Trunks rushing to go fight the androids is definitely one of the biggest mistakes, kind of for his own will. And the fact of the matter is, the manga emphasizes this a lot more, Mike, because it was implied that future Gohan was nowhere near as strong as the androids in the manga, whereas in the anime it's kind of implied that he could have held his own. And the fact of the matter is, Trunks was willing to kind of throw his life away after he knew that Gohan stood no chance against the androids and rushed out to go fight the androids, nearly getting himself killed. And had he gotten himself killed, it would have really messed up a lot of the events of the past, and Bulma herself would have ended up having to go back to the past and trying to fix everything, and that would have changed all of the events because of Trunks' blunder to throw his life away. So I definitely think that's one of his biggest mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Trunks almost threw his life away and the entire fate of the future of all the other timelines in the Dragon Ball multiverse, just because he wanted to get revenge on the androids despite the fact that he was completely outclassed.
But I should say though, Mike, in terms of justice, we can't really hate on him for trying to help, obviously all of the innocent people who are being affected by the androids. It's just that the grander scheme of things was put at risk. But let me ask you though, Mike, what do you think about those who might disagree with us in saying that Trunks was trying to do the greater good by trying to save all of those innocent people being killed by the androids?
Well, Trunks definitely could have helped to save some of the people that the androids were attacking, but in the end he failed catastrophically because he got the crap beat out of him, and the androids still kept killing people regardless. So it was a bad decision, and it accomplished nothing except for almost getting himself killed and kind of ruining everything in the process.
So the bigger picture was more important.
Absolutely. So the next one we're going to be discussing is going to be another big blunder that Trunks really made, and it's one that really could have affected and impacted the entire future of what we saw in the main timeline, and that is Future Trunks not describing the androids to Goku and the rest of the Z Fighters. Now let's think about it like this. Goku and the rest of the Z Fighters went to fight these 2 androids, 19 and 20, who showed up on the island, and they assumed that these were the ones who had terrorized the future as Trunks had spoken of. However, after they had defeated 19 and Piccolo was fighting Dr. Gero or Android 20, we discovered from Trunks that they are not in fact the same androids, and after Dr. Gero had escaped, Trunks finally described the androids to the main protagonist, saying that 17 and 18 were their real names, and they had the features of pretty much a young teenage male and a young beautiful woman. So if Trunks had really described this before he went to the future again, so that our heroes knew exactly who they were supposed to fight, I feel like they would have been significantly better prepared. Not to mention, he could have mentioned something like how they cannot sense these creatures, and, you know, that is a huge problem because it almost resulted in Yamcha and Yajirobe being killed.
Right, and I guess what I would add to that is that originally, for those of you who don't know, all of this was originally a retcon, because originally in the manga, Trunks said androids 19 and 20 were the ones that terrorized his future. So in essence, it's not really Trunks' mistake, it's more of a retcon. However, when you think of the context of the story itself, and you just analyzed it straightforward, Trunks did blunder by not trying to give them at least some details as to what they were up against. So even though it was a retcon, Trunks' in-canon reasons were still a bad decision.
Exactly. So what's the next one we're discussing on this list?
The next one I wanted to talk about is Trunks not staying in the past. Now, this is more of an out-of-universe question, but the fact of the matter is, if Trunks had stayed in the past through the 3 years where they were training for the androids, think about how significantly stronger Goku, Gohan, and the rest of them could have been. Now, obviously, a lot of people might say if Trunks continued to stay there, that could have obviously have affected the way that the events of history could have gone out, and Trunks might not have been born as a result of this. However, it still doesn't excuse the fact that Trunks could have at least stayed there for X amount of point of time to help better prepare them for the android threat, and he could have also stayed there so he could try to look for Dr. Gero himself and find clues as to where he might actually be.
Exactly, and even if Trunks, say, was not born or was not born at a particular time during the main timeline, the fact of the matter is Trunks comes from a completely different multiverse of sorts, as his timeline is basically a parallel universe that contains all 12 of the universes, so he still would exist. It would just negatively impact the main timeline that way, but it would more positively impact it due to the fact that Trunks could help to train the weaker fighters like the humans. He could help to show Gohan how to turn into a Super Saiyan, much like I assume that Gohan showed Trunks how to turn into a Super Saiyan in the original manga continuity. And he certainly could have contributed to training up everyone and making them far more prepared by the time the androids arrived, rather than them basically rushing in blindly, which almost resulted in a number of them being killed in the process.
Right. That would have been very, 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 very idiotic. But moving on to our next point, what do you think about Trunks' next mistake, Mike?
Okay, so this one is really interesting, as instead of it being more of direct intervention, or at least a direct mistake on Trunks' part, this is more having to do with Zamasu and his reasoning. Now, as Zamasu told to future Trunks, basically everything that happened during the Black Arc was a result of Trunks' interference in the timeline by going back in time and giving Goku the heart virus medication, which eventually allowed Goku to meet Zamasu and kind of give him the fuel to enact his Zero Mortals plan by showing him just how powerful a mortal could become and being a threat to the very gods themselves. And Zamasu stated that saving Goku and interfering was what really gave him the fuel to go and about this plan in the very first place. So this means that even though Trunks was doing a good thing by our main timeline, saving Goku with the heart virus medication, allowing Goku to live to fight so that he could help Gohan defeat Cell, and basically do a lot of the things he ended up doing in the main timeline, as a result of his actions, his own timeline, the history of Trunks timeline, ended up being destroyed by Zamasu. Now, QAAMAN, what do you think about this? Do you think this was a big mistake, or do you think this was really kind of out of Trunks' hands?
I think, Mike, it's a little bit of both, because if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, right? In the grand scheme of things, it was a massive mistake because it ended up causing Trunks' universe to be destroyed. But in terms of Trunks trying or intentionally doing that, it's not really his fault. It's just he tried to do the best he could, and that just kind of had a side effect that ultimately resulted in his entire universe being wiped out, ultimately, and timeline. So yeah, so I don't think it was his fault per se, but the consequences that he caused ended up causing all of this.
Wouldn't it have made more sense if Zamasu was pissed off at the original Trunks from the original timeline that Cell came from? Because he was the one one who caused everything in the first place and created the unseen timeline, which led to the main timeline anyway. Don't you think Zamasu should have been pissed off at that Trunks instead of just a doppelganger from another timeline?
No, he should have been mad at Bulma because she made the fucking time machine.
Yeah, seriously. So let's finally get into the very last one that we're going to be describing on this list. And QAAMAN, would you like to take it ahead for me?
Well, let me just tell you guys a little quick story here. So when I first met Mike approximately a year and a half ago, one of the first conversations we had was talking about Trunks' blunder against Semi-Perfect Cell, and I didn't originally think of this as a mistake until Mike really elaborated on this point, and this is the fact that Trunks failed to kill Semi-Perfect Cell. Now, many of you might be saying, well, why is that a mistake? Well, the fact of the matter is, the entire time Semi-Perfect Cell was around, Trunks and Vegeta could have easily have defeated them individually by themselves. Like, if Trunks powered up into Super Saiyan Grade 2 or 3, he could have wiped them out right there on the spot. But out of respect for Vegeta, he chose not to, and he chose to do it against Cell's much stronger form when Vegeta was knocked out. And had Trunks actually killed Semi-Perfect Cell and just said, you know what, Dad, to hell with what the hell you're saying, this guy's way too dangerous, and killed him, he might have lost some respect from his dad, but he would have actually have saved a lot of people. Goku wouldn't have died, and most importantly, Mike, guess what? He wouldn't have died himself, even though he came back. So really, that's the biggest mistake Trunks made when you kind of analyze this in the bubble, because he didn't have to sit there and think of pride versus reality.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Well, Mike, you would agree with me though, right? Because this was originally your point.
Of course. But let's look at it like this at the very end of the day. Let's weigh the options here. The entire human race, the entire purpose of Trunks' mission, why he went back in time, or his father's feelings. Which one do you think is more valuable? I mean, at the end of the day, I would have to say Vegeta could get all pissy and he can get all mad that Trunks would interfere and kill his enemy. But at the end of the day, I think that the entire universe, really, when you think about it, is a lot more important than Vegeta's feelings getting a little bit hurt and Vegeta becoming butthurt as a result. I mean, it's not like it's really his dad at the end of the day, it's just kind of a doppelganger. So why does he care so much? I don't know, just because the plot required him to. And when you think about it, just kind of like when Tien, instead of attacking Cell, should have attacked 18, Trunks had seen 18 about the same time Cell did. All Trunks had to do was jump down to where 18 was, vaporize her, and all this would be over and Cell never would have become perfect. So even if he didn't kill Cell, he still could have killed 18, and Vegeta would just be annoyed that he couldn't fight perfect Cell, which obviously would result in him getting utterly pwned.
Well, I will say this though, Mike, because you always have to think about people who might have counter arguments. Some people might say, well, Trunks actually did try to kill Semi-Perfect Cell and he was in the process of killing him, but Vegeta was the one who actually jumped in and was kind of slowing Trunks down. What do you think about that?
That is true. However, Vegeta also asked Trunks, oh, what are you gonna do, blast your own father? And Trunks did it, so it seemed like Trunks was gonna commit, but that didn't really work out in the end. We all know that Krillin kinda dropped the ball, or the remote in this case, right, when it came to killing 18.
So in essence, I think we could pretty much conclude on this issue that Trunks' blunder was just sitting there idly. That was the blunder. It wasn't the fact that he tried too late to try and stop Semi-Perfect Cell. He should have just gone there, fuck you, Dad, I'm killing him, and that was it.
Exactly. I mean, all he had to really do was say, hey, Vegeta, is that a giant worm over there? And Vegeta would have freaked the heck out because he's afraid of those worms, as you remember in the Buu Saga, which Toriyama totally planned before this, and all of what I'm saying right now is canon. This has been 5 times Future Trunks messed up in the Dragon Ball franchise. Make sure to go down below in the description, as there is a link to QAAMAN'S channel, and check out his content, which you're really going to enjoy. And subscribe to this channel if you like this video, so you can see more content like this when it comes out right away. And as I always say, stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.
Yeah, this scrawny Future Trunks messed up in the biggest way of all that you didn't even include on the list. And that was not just asking me to take care of all of his scrawny little problems. I could have easily beaten Murshamasu with 1% of my muscularity. God, the Trunks from the future is such a broly wannabe motherfucker. What a bitch. Oh yeah, and subscribe. Blah blah.